ignition, flashover, max heat, decay. I've been working fires 30 years, long enough to know there's a fifth stage no one talks about. The most important one. The one before it all. Before the spark. I call it the trap. Today on the Comic Book Report, Dark Spaces Wildfire by Scott Snyder. Stick around and check it out. Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I'm here to review a really exciting title from IDW. We're going to be looking at part of the Dark Spaces anthology series. This first entry is from Scott Snyder, one of my absolute favorite writers. This is Wildfire. Scott Snyder will go on to write Dark Spaces Dungeon, which is another book that I got from IDW here. I plan to review both of these titles on the channel, this one now and Dungeon sometime soon. There are other entries in the Dark Spaces anthology series, though I believe those were from different creators. But anyway, I wanted to say a huge thank you to those at IDW for sending me this review copy in exchange for an honest review. And with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. First, some quick facts about today's collection. The issues in this volume were written by Scott Snyder and penciled by Hayden Sherman, with coloring from Ronda Pattison. The issues in this collection were published by IDW beginning in 2022. As far as what this volume collects, it includes Dark Spaces Wildfire, issues 1 through 5. And finally, this standard size trade paperback collection has nice glossy print paper stock, a glued binding, and a total of 160 pages. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and issue a general spoiler warning. I will be flipping through the contents of today's collection and commenting on plot points throughout. You've been advised. Okay, and here's our first dedicated look at the cover for today's trade paperback collection. Yes, this is Dark Spaces Wildfire. I first heard about this title on Scott Snyder's Instagram, I believe. I remember when he first promoted this. I didn't know anything about it, but I'm a huge fan of Scott Snyder, and I thought that the artwork looked evocative and interesting. You might have noticed earlier I did shout out the colorist, Ronda Pattison, because the coloring in this collection is exquisite, and you see it on full display, even on the cover of this trade paperback. A quick look at the spine. We have Dark Spaces at the top, noting the series or the anthology. Wildfire, the title of this collection, the creators, things like that, IDW. Love the spine design. I love that we retain the orange, and there is some uniformity between this collection and Dark Spaces Dungeon. I plan to do a bit of a side-by-side with the two books, just so you can see what they both look like and what they would appear like on the bookshelf. But I'll get to that in a moment. Right now, here is the back cover. We have this beautiful house on the back cover of the trade paperback. Blurb about the book, some things, some pricing, things like that. Overall, a pretty standard back cover for this trade paperback. I like that this was mostly black, and then the color on top obviously still pops. A really nicely made little trade paperback. And now for all you prospective collectors out there, a quick look at the binding for this paperback. It is just a standard glued binding. No real complaints here, maybe a little bit of gutter loss, but it's all pretty minimal. I had no issues with it myself, but again, I wanted to give everyone out there a quick look at what they may expect from this book's binding. Okay, and now that we've finished that out, we can take a look at the side-by-side I mentioned earlier. So this is Dark Spaces Wildfire next to Dark Spaces Dungeon. As far as I know, this is the collection that immediately followed Wildfire, but it's a completely different series. Again, it's anthology style, so consider them individual episodes. They might as well be their own thing, except for they're just loosely tied with this greater series, Dark Spaces. Interestingly enough as well, Wildfire is much more of a heist thriller. Dungeon is more of a psychological horror thriller. Again, more on that title later if you're interested. I actually think that was just optioned for a television or film of some kind. Anyway, really riveting stuff. Both collections I thoroughly enjoyed, but stay tuned for Dungeon later on. And as you can see on the spines, there is some uniformity and matching here other than the changes in colors, which I do like to see. I think it was really smart to do it relatively uniform. I hope the additional entries in this anthology series follow suit, just again with that level of uniformity, because I think that this could look really striking on a bookcase. And speaking of striking, look how gorgeous the interiors of this book are. Again, Ronda Pattison just really knocks it out of the park with the coloring, and that's something I see throughout. Especially the oranges, yellows, and kind of pinks. That warmer color palette just really is something else throughout this entire work. But after those opening title pages, publication information page, creator breakdown page, we basically jump right into the first issue. And like so many other great Scott Snyder works that I've enjoyed over the years, we have a lot of great kind of internal narration. This is the kind of stuff I came to love in his Batman run and have loved in a lot of his subsequent projects. He has a way with exposition and that internal monologuing that feels, I don't want to go as far as to say poetic, maybe at times, but it's just really beautifully done. You feel like you're reading a soliloquy in the best way, and that's absolutely what we have here. It's more than just setup, it's like a beautiful reflection on the state of things. We have this kind of wraparound image we get throughout a lot of the series about the stages of a fire or a fire outbreak. Each of the issues kind of targets one of these aspects or stages of a fire as well. So that's what I mean, where it's kind of a framing image and every issue kind of takes a part as the fire spreads kind of metaphorically. That really mirrors the journey of our central cast of characters as they go throughout the pages of this book. And that's where I'll probably segue into describing what is the plot of Dark Spaces Wildfire. Well, basically it follows a troupe of women, most of which are essentially prisoners, and there's kind of a work prison program where they assist in kind of firefighting, essentially. I don't know how else to say that. The woman that looks out for them, that's also kind of like helping the prisoners or what have you, is kind of the lead of this firefighting faction, and they're addressing, I think, California wildfires. Obviously, this is a very present topic. I myself am a Southern Californian resident, and I know at the time of this recording, not too long ago, we did have the Los Angeles and kind of Pasadena wildfires, all of those. So very, very sympathetic to the victims of that. But obviously, the subject matter hits pretty close to home, and I think how they portray wildfires is pretty eye-opening, jaw-dropping, but in this case it is artistically done, and there's a lot of beauty in the actual coloring of everything in this comic work. But what the story of this is really about is it follows this group of kind of work reform prisoners as they kind of go across this woodland, forested area that's beginning to be in fire danger. And one of them basically sees a really well-to-do house there. We find out that they've done research, and they believe that in the case of an emergency evacuation, that this house could actually be robbed. And it actually has a cryptocurrency kind of digital vault that they could basically make away with millions. And so all of the kind of female prisoners here in this small firefighting troop kind of scheme, like, what could we do with that money? Could we actually pull off a heist like this? Their kind of caretaker, who is maybe not in that sort of persuasion of criminal activity, they think that they can never possibly do it without her, but she's kind of a mother hen figure to all of them, and it's a really interesting relationship as she kind of helps them try to reform. Ultimately, we find out that she is actually at a crossroads with her health and with her life, and so when the idea is pitched, they actually kind of all go in on it. And from that point, Wildfire becomes kind of a heist narrative of how these women, during a kind of fire evacuation stint, can go and rob this mansion. So as they go to do that, they find out that this kind of house has some layers of security, and they actually find a dead body when they go into the vault. They find what they need, though, in the servers within this house, but before they're able to escape, we find a group of kind of mercenaries. Let's call them mercenaries. Basically opening fire on them, their mother hen figure gets shot, and everything goes into a mad scramble. So we go from kind of wildfire character drama to heist kind of sequence to a kind of thriller trying to survive situation. The women are bound and held captive while these mercenaries seem to want to clear the evidence and the the area. They take one of the women hostage, and it's up to the remaining 3 plus their leader to kind of figure out what to do from here. There's a lot of crying and reflecting on their lives before ultimately they escape and confront their attackers. They find that one of the women who was abducted by the mercenaries was actually in on it and had betrayed them from the start. They are able to dispatch the mercenaries, and they're about to get away scot-free when they realize that the wildfire is actually about to consume the region that they were meant to protect and scout out initially. Instead of trying to flee with their presumed millions, the women of this firefighting brigade end up opting to stay and deal with the consequences and try to do their best to help out with this wildfire, of course leaving the one that betrayed them to kind of go her own way, but we believe that she'll be caught by the authorities at a later point. That is kind of the overall plotline and synopsis of Dark Spaces Wildfire. I think more than that, though, we gotta look at some of the other aspects of this work. Of course, the beautiful visuals here. Hayden Sherman is a creator I wasn't familiar with before reading this. The art style is really rugged and interesting. There's a lot of details that go from beautiful to grotesque in how they convey the art styles. It's just really, you have to see it to behold it, but you pair that with Pattinson's art, and this is just a really spectacular visual work. I think that this was a really good example of kind of synergism and collaboration. All the creators are firing on full cylinders here. I have always been a fan of Scott Snyder. I am new to these other comic book creators, but altogether they delivered a really tight, tense thriller that has a lot of great underpinnings. I feel like this is also a work that I could benefit more upon reread as I just delve deeper into the psychological profiles of each of the characters. This was intensely character driven but action packed. I really liked it though. Overall, unlike much I've read lately, and it made me really eager to see what else occurred in the Dark Spaces anthology. Like, if this is just one episode, what other stories are in the chamber for this series? At the back of the collection that you're seeing now, we have a good handful of extras actually in this volume, which was a delight to see. You never know what you're going to get with a trade paperback, but we have great kind of staged artwork, behind the scenes art. We have kind of a variant cover art gallery. Some of those covers are thumbnailed and small, some are full size. We have some character modeling. All of this is at the back of the trade paperback. Again, I love to see this. I was not expecting so many extras, and I was really delighted to see it, especially since I ended up loving this work and the art so very much. And that really brings us to the end of Dark Spaces Wildfire. All that's left to do now is to give this collection a grade. For a fascinating thriller heist narrative paired with some of the most gorgeous visual colored art I've seen in some time, the Comic Book Report is happy to give Dark Spaces Wildfire by Scott Snyder, Hayden Sherman, Ronda Pattison from IDW a B. This was definitely an above average read, a great one and done collection that left me so optimistic for the future of this anthology series. Really a well told story that I thought was really well paced. Honestly, it's a thriller, but I never felt like I was too rushed. It was intensely character driven. I got to know each and every one of the characters, and I just really enjoyed the ride. From cover to cover, a really, really brilliant little 5-issue work. But that's just my opinion on Dark Spaces Wildfire. I would love to hear yours in the comment section. Is this something you've already read? Do you plan to pick it up? Are you a fan of Scott Snyder or any of the other creators attached to it? Had you heard about this series? Have you read any other entries in the Dark Spaces anthology? Again, I would love to know all of that in the comments section, and thank you so much for sticking around with me. And a special thank you again to those at IDW for sending this review copy in exchange for this honest review. Until next time, everyone, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to leave your comment, your like, and maybe share this video with a friend. Thanks everyone, have a good one.